So in today's lesson of theoretical physics, we're going to go over wave functions. If you look at image 7354 at page number 4, you will see that we have a nice example of a hydrogen atom showing you the probability of finding the electron in the space around it, in the space around its nucleus. Each stationary state defines a specific... Okay, fine. Fuck. Fine. I'm going to make a UI video. I'm gonna go over my add-ons, why have I chose them, how am I using them, how did I set them up, and some tips for you, specifically for the more important ones, like DBM and like WeakAuras. Now, I already made this video a while ago, a similar one on how to set up your UI, because I was getting triggered by the flood of clickbait entering my feed on YouTube about the top 5 things to do before Shadowlands, the Shadowlands things to do tier list, don't miss this before Shadowlands rankings, and all this clickbait that was just telling you the most basic, low barrier things like remember to take your pet from Mechagon and remember to take the mount from Najatar and some more useless shit and some more very entry level stuff, and nobody was mentioning some important stuff like remember that an expansion is gonna last more or less a couple of years, and you're supposed to play in it with your UI. The action bars, the cast bars, the boss mods, then the WeakAuras you will choose will stay with you for 2 years. The key bindings, the unit frames, all of that is gonna stay with you for 2 years, so you need to pay a little bit more attention to that part of the game as well. I know you're excited by, choosing your main, your alt, choosing your role, your class, your spec, but still remember that whatever you choose will still have to be played inside your UI. So spend a little bit more time setting up your UI. Don't just copy paste whatever you find online with a lot of upvotes and a lot of downloads and just pick what you like and set it up the way you want it to be. The way you want it to be set up is the way I tell you to, because I'm sure there are some things you're overlooking. If you haven't seen the video I just linked about setting up your UI, please go and do so, because it is very informative. I'm not biased. I'm not saying it because I made it myself. It has been approved by a jury of top men, so you are safe on that. You have a seal of approval. Now, about my add-ons. The difference between beta and live of my UI is pretty minor. This is the beta and this is live. The main difference were really just the add-ons that were broken in the beta that I didn't bother to put back in even when they were fixed, and then the combat text. So since I received quite a few requests about the combat text is RGSCT. Now when we go into the options of RGSCT, you can see that this is all there is. RGSCT is a very lightweight add-on, but to be lightweight also means the options are very light. Basically it's just the font and the size, and that's it. You don't really have much else. If you do want to go for more, if you do want to go for more customization and more options, then you have to go for mixed scrolling battle text, MSBT. MSBT obviously offers you way more customization. You can go from choosing all of the triggers, all of the events, the passives and the procs of your spec. From that you can go to the spam control, which is going to be, ignoring small tiny numbers you don't care anything about. You can also go and look and set up the cooldowns for your spec, the font, the size, even the skill icons. You can choose if you want to have just the icons pop up, the icons and the name, just the name, the shortened name, and then of course you can have the scroll areas with much better customization. This is the customization I am using for my combat text in live. So if you want some more ready to go combat text, you have to go for RGSCT, otherwise you should go for MSBT. My own suggestion is to not go for RGSCT. I just went for it in the beta because it was pretty much the only one available. There is going to be a lot of clutter. You won't be able to remove a lot of unimportant info coming in and out with that add-on. So I would suggest using MSBT. Also, if we want to be honest, it's not that a combat text is necessary. As a matter of fact, a combat text is just going to distract you from what is going on. You don't really need to know you are critting for 15k on one target. What does it change about your rotation? What does it matter? Nothing. The only reason you want it is because it feels cool and it feels good, right? That's the reason you use combat text, but beyond that it doesn't have much uses. Now, looking on some other less important add-ons. Now going through a list of less important add-ons, as well as add-ons you might not even see in my videos having an effect. One is of course Sexy Map. In a classic contrarian style, I took Sexy Map and then I picked Sexy and took it out of the map with this boomer wooden border. You know, most people who pick Sexy Map pick it for edgy stuff like this. Wow, so cool. But I don't give a shit. I just want my boomer border here. Another one is Chatter. Just want my chat to be hidden, basically. I don't want to be distracted with stuff coming in when I'm playing and, you know, when I'm fighting, when I'm in combat. And Chatter works just fine. Another cool one is Move Anything. Just pick whatever you want from the Blizzard UI and you can move it. You have, you know, you can move your guild panels, you can move your character panels, you can move your minimap, you can move your map. Are you annoyed that the objective windows always seems like it's like in the middle of the screen? Just go to achievements, go to objective window, click on mover, and then just move it whenever you want. Very, very helpful and handy. Another one for fashion points is going to be Mask. Mask is essentially a skinner for other compatible add-ons. For example, look at Bartender. Bartender has a zoomed skin. If you look at the icons of Bartender, when I disable it, they go back to normal. You can choose other things like Dream, you can choose things like the default, or you can go to something like Classic. You can go online and find other skins for Mask, things like circle icons, star icons, diamond icons. Really, whatever you want, you're gonna find it for Mask. The reason why I'm using Mask is more for my WeakAuras. I want my WeakAuras to be zoomed in, fat and big icons, which is something you can do in WeakAura by default, but you have to do it manually for each one, and it's just faster to use Mask to do it. That's why I use it. Now, another very handy add-on for quality of life, which is sort of edging towards competitive because you can use it in combat as well, very easily, is Opie. Opie is a ring add-on. You can keybind to opening up a ring around your character and then selecting whatever item, spell, mount, consumable you put in there. It is particularly useful for things like targeting, for example, or markers. It is also useful for things like world markers. You know, it is going to save a lot of key bindings off of you by using Opie. We just bundle all of them in a single key binding. Very, very handy. Now, another quality of life for your chat. On top of Chatter, you can use something like Bad Boy. Just filter everything you don't want to see, filter all the spam so you don't see it. Very, very simple add-on, very, very helpful. Now, lastly, for our non-combat add-ons we're going over is add-on skins. So if you have wondered, as I was opening a bunch of options, how did I get it to make it like this? If you are a refugee of a compilation add-on like ElvUI, like TACUI, and similar other compilations, add-on skins allows you to essentially keep the style of those all-in-one add-ons without actually having to use them. And it's gonna look something like this. You can go into the add-on skins options and then just choose the colors whatever you want. You can go into the Blizzard skins and just enable whatever part of the Blizzard UI you want to make look like this. And then you're done. You don't need anything else to make it look like this. Now though, we have to go into the actual combat portion of the add-ons. So the only thing that matters here. The first of the combat add-on, the least relevant one, is going to be the unit frames, the portraits and unit frames of me, my target, my focus target, etc, etc. That is going to be shadowed unit frames. I don't put much importance into the unit frames, too much, because I don't think they are that important to your combat experience, particularly for your target. You're going to be looking at the nameplates on your target. The debuffs are going to be on the nameplates as well. It's not that important, so that's that. The more important stuff, for the layout of my party and my raid, I use Grid, specifically Grid 2, as the reborn, reworked version of Grid. This is going to be particularly good when it comes to healers. You know, it is not that necessary to be using something like Grid when it comes to DPS and tanks, to be fair. It is way more necessary for healers because you can customize things like debuffs as well as buffs of your own spec. Very important for classes, for example, like Druid, with a lot of HOTS to put on the target. You want to keep track of them on a layout like Grid when it comes to party, but specifically when it comes to raids. There is also the age of question of where you want to put this as a healer. As a DPS, you can just chunk it here, you can chunk it here, above or below your damage meters, wherever you want. As a healer, usually it has to go in the Holy Trinity, either right below you, to your right, or to your left. If you want a little tip, you are going to have a dominant side, which is going to be generally on the side of your dominant hand. So if you are right-handed, normally this would be a good position, somewhere around here. Now, together with grid, talking about healers, we have to go to its little brother. And the little brother that goes hand in hand with grid for healers is going to be click. Click is essentially your automated mouse over macro maker. Yeah, it's a long title, but that's what it does. When you have your party frames and your raid frames, you can download click, and now click is going to make everything you select there a mouse over. You open your spellbook, you then open click, you enter binding mode, and then you find whatever spell you want to bind. Let's say Healing Surge. I already have one, let's make another one. Let's say you want to put it on 1. Now Healing Surge is going to be bound on 1. Chain Heal is also bound on 1. You have a bunch of different options. For example, I can make it only for Elemental. And Chain Heal on 1 is only for Restoration. So now when I click 1, I am going to Healing Surge on mouse over. There are other helpful options that you can't quite get past macros. For example, I have Chain Heal on right button, but I also have Show Unit Menu on right button. Show Unit Menu has the option of using it out of combat only, whereas Chain Heal is only used on default friendlies as resto, which means out of combat I can just right click on portraits, but in combat I won't be able to because I will be using Chain Heal. That is very, very helpful for healers. Again, a little bit less for DPS and tanks, but it's still useful for things, as I mentioned, like dispels and decurses that you can mouse over on raid frames and party frames. Now on to some more raid related add-ons like Angry Assignments. /AA, you get out your Angry Assignments, toggle lock, toggle window. This is what you do with Angry Assignments. You open up your block notes and then you display what you just written in Angry Assignments, and that's what comes out. Essentially a list of cooldowns for you to use in all the different encounters. Of course, this is also very useful for healers. Another important one, this one though, I'm gonna try not to scare the casuals away, so I will be pretty quiet, is going to be Exorsus Raid Tools. Exorsus Raid Tools has a myriad of different options you can use. You can see them in the left side of the column, all the different things you can pick when you raid. The more important one, which is something you can also use when you're in Mythic Plus, it is very powerful, but specifically still for raids, is going to be the raid cooldowns. When you go over spells, you pretty much get every single spell in the game. If you want some simpler display, you can go on the side here and pick major raid cooldowns. There you have them. Single target, there you have them. Combat Tresses, raid movement, kicks, utility, AoE CC, healer utility, specific to all different classes, and then you have damage. All of this is going to serve the purpose of giving you a good outlook on what is going on in the raid, who has what CC, who has what raid CD. You can do things like, there we go. You can put them wherever you want, you can resize them wherever you want. Of course, right now they are fucking gigantic because I haven't loaded up my profile. These are just test bars, but that's how they work. You put them whenever you want, and then you get to see properly based on your role and whatever you are interested in. Tank cooldowns, healer cooldowns, DPS cooldowns, CC, AoE CC, whatever you want to see, that's going to show. That is also going to be very important for competitive PvE content. Now, my nameplate. The nameplate you see here, the nameplate you have seen in the beta as well, in every single video, is Plater. Now, Plater has actually full customization enabled with WeakAuras. It can allow you a lot of different options, and it is about the hardest basically and the more varied nameplate add-on you can use. Yes, the options look like this. which can be off-putting to people who just have absolutely no idea where to go from. So similar to RGSCT for your combat text, if you don't want to have something too complicated, you can go for different types of nameplates, like KUI nameplates. If you want to go for Plater, I do suggest you to go to wago.io, which is where you get your WeakAuras from, and then just look for Plater profiles instead. You can get pre-made profiles already working for whatever you want to do. That there are profiles for PvP, there are profiles for Mythic Plus, for different specs, for healers, for whatnot, so you can just go in there and pick a pre-made one. Now, before we go over the last two more important add-ons for your performance in-game, we have the better add-on for your performance out of the game, your analytical review of your performance. Outside of the game, you will be going over things like simulations, things like simulation craft or raid bots, and then things like Warcraft logs. I will be making videos about what to do and what to look for, those types of tools, before the raid is going to open in Shadowlands, so it's going to be a while. But for now, in-game, as an add-on, you want to go for something like Details. So Details is essentially the more complete and the more diverse of all of the damage meter add-ons, from Details to Recount to SCADA. Details is obviously the more complete. It has a lot of different plugins you can use that are going to essentially function like a miniature Warcraft logs. You can go for things like Encounter Breakdown to see things like the damage graphic, compare it with other attempts to see how your raid did. You can go for things like timers for the boss encounters, as well as the summary, to have a huge look at what happened much more easily than you can in a normal Details window. You can go for timelines, you can go for charts, your damage, the raid damage, death logs, advanced death logs. So, you know, a mini Warcraft logs for you in-game. Now, on to the combat add-ons, the more important ones, your boss mod and your WeakAuras. Boss mods is fine, DBM or bigwigs, either one, it's just fine. However, I have to mention, boss mods are pretty much the more unappreciated and misused add-on you can go for, because a lot of people generally are content with just downloading the boss mod and that's it. You know, they have their boss bars and they're fine. Some people want to go one step further sometimes, and they just go to DBM, in my case, go to the options and then customize their bars. For me, my bigger bar, the one that shows the closer abilities from arriving, is closer to my center of vision, and the smaller bars, the ones that show abilities further away from arriving, are further away from my central vision because I don't care about them too much. But even then, that's where most people go with customizing your boss mods. The real importance in customizing your boss mods is in the actual boss by boss options. I'm gonna pick up a couple of the bosses that most people will have done by now, like Moat and Zanesh. And just to point out, I'm not, you know, playing them with these setups and doing terribly. I did just fine playing Zanesh and playing Moat on progress months and months and months ago, like this. When I look at a fight, I just ignore stuff I don't care about in my bars and in my announcements of DBM, because you would be surprised how much you can be, you know, taken off focus, taken off your stride, off your flow in your rotation in managing the fight by having constant sounds and bars showing up by DBM or bigwigs. For example, I don't care about showing a special warning with a countdown for Void Ritual. If down here in bars I already have a timer for Void Ritual, that's enough. I don't need both. I don't need a special warning to move out of the bad stuff on the ground. I don't need to have an announcement for Fanaticism, the attack speed buff on the boss, because I don't care about it. I don't need to have Soul Flay targets announced. You should only care about your own Soul Flay. You don't care about the other targets. When it comes to personal announces, Abyssal Strike is tank related stuff, so irrelevant. Show special warning to run away from Soul Flay. You don't need a special warning. That's the only thing you need to do with Soul Flay. You get Soul Flay, it means you have to run away from the copy to reduce the damage of the explosion. That's it. Same goes for the bars. I just want to see the cooldown of Void Ritual and cooldown of Torment. I don't care about Berserk. I don't care about Soul Flay. I don't care about the tank ability. You know, when I'm fighting, I don't want to have a bar here which is telling me the cooldown of a tank related ability. I don't care. The same can be said for Moat. It's basically barren when I progressed on Moat. I don't care about Ancient Curse, because it's obvious, because I have my own debuff tracker. I can see when the Ancient Curse is coming, and in Mythic, if you've progressed, you have a order. You know, party 1 goes in, then party 2 goes in, then party 3 goes in. I don't need to be made aware of Ancient Curse. I can see it for myself. Same goes for the warning to Dark Offering. I don't give a shit about the ads using Dark Offering. Same for Forbidden Ritual. You know, the big giant orbs traveling slowly towards Moat are very obvious to see. I don't need to be made aware. That's the only thing that happens in that phase that is very important. Target announces are the same. Devour Magic, Shadow Wounds is a tank related things. I don't care about it. Off it goes. Same goes for bars. I want to see the cooldown of Devour Magic because it's important. It actually forces you to do something different that you weren't doing before. I don't need to see the cooldown for Stygian Annihilation. You know, it's a very slow, very predictable ability you have to dodge. I don't need to see the bars for that. It is already blatantly obvious what you have to do when Stygian Annihilation comes through. Same goes for a bar similar to Zanesh. I don't want to have a bar for Shadow Claws because that's for tanks, right? I don't need to see it. Another thing you can do is change things like your sounds. You know, the personal announces, like showing the special warning when you're affected by Ancient Curse. I don't need a bar to show me that I have Ancient Curse. That to me is very important when you want to set up your own boss mod. Don't just look at the bars, don't just look at where you want to put them, how you want to make them look. You actually have to go into the encounter and set it up for you. If you're a tank, you don't care about all the shit that affects the range DPS. If you're a healer, you don't care about all the shit that affects melee DPS. Unless of course it's something that does damage. You don't have the same role for every single spot in the raid, meaning multiple people will have to do different things. This should reflect in the way you set up your boss mod. Now though, onto the star of your own UI, WeakAuras. Now, as for WeakAuras, you will see a paste bin link in the description where you will see and find all of my WeakAuras from the beta. I realized this could have been the video, actually. Now, a lot of those WeakAuras have been copied and then slightly modified versions of very good WeakAura makers like Public, like Afenar, so I'm gonna leave behind their profile links on wago.io. Speaking about wago.io, that's the place you go for when you are looking for WeakAuras to make or to just copy paste. However, talking about copy pasting, a lot of the WeakAuras you will find, you know, are going to be suites, are going to be compilations that are very, very low entry, very, very simple and very, very basic. On my main, for example, which is right here, this is the WeakAura I have, and the key thing I want to look at when I make my WeakAura is the least amount of information possible. How many things can I hide? How many things do I not need to see? A lot of the WeakAuras you will find, a lot of the WeakAuras I've used in the beta, because I don't have the time or the interest in handcrafting every single WeakAura for every single spec in the game, is that they have filled their WeakAura setup with a bunch of abilities that are not very important. They're not very necessary for you to see. So whenever you pick up one of those WeakAuras that you think are very cool looking and all, just start removing all the useless things. As a shaman, for example, on my setup, I don't need to see something like Thunderstorm. Why? I am raiding. I don't need to see Thunderstorm, right? Sometimes it's gonna be important to see, at least when it's available. So when I use it, it's gonna show up on cooldown. Maybe some fights are going to have ads, which will require some rotation of AoE CC. Me being a shaman, I have my stun totem, so I can show the stun totem as well. Maybe the slow totem is important, you know, maybe the interrupt is important, so I can make them show up on cooldown if it's important, but the only things I want showing up all the time are my rotation, my offensive CDs and my defensive CDs. So you can go on and pick up your pre-made WeakAura if you want, if you don't want to tinker with it too much, but again, the same point I made before, guys. If you have to play with your own character for like 2 years, you might want to, you know, personalize your WeakAuras a little bit. It's not that difficult to learn, especially when you only have to move things. You don't have to create anything yourself. You don't have to make anything overly complicated. Just move around things and remove the less important things you don't want to see in your WeakAura setup, which is the way I did it. Start with a pre-made one and then start removing stuff you don't care about. And this was just about all of the important add-ons I'm using. I probably missed a couple of maintenance ones, some bag add-ons or whatnot, but that's just whatever. So this was pretty much all. I realized it was pointless to go on after I told you my WeakAura links. I am pretty much speaking just to myself right now, to an empty crowd. So to everyone that is not here, see you guys soon. And in the meantime, go and make your own WeakAuras.